What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, but to lose his soul? What can a man give in exchange for his soul? I submit to you that the African American evangelical community has sold its soul for political expediency. During the 2020 presidential election, doing a interview on an African American radio station, President Biden said, "If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black." Then, after Georgia passed the Voter Registration Reform Act bill, he came out and said, "This is the new Jim Crow." I'm African American, and I didn't have a problem figuring out who to vote or for Trump or Biden. My only issue was, could I vote for President Trump? And I am black. And I'm insulted when I hear the sitting president of the United States uh, equate having an ID to Jim Crow South, calling the Georgia Voter Act the new Jim Crow is an insult to all the African Americans and also the courageous Caucasians, brothers and sisters who gave blood, sweat, and tears that I and my people can have the right to vote. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Ricky, and welcome to Thinking Critically from an Evangelical Worldview. If this is your first time, I invite you to strongly consider clicking that subscribe button, hitting the bell to be notified of any future videos. Today, we're going to talk about the voter registration reform bills that have been passed in Georgia and my home state, my current home state of Texas. And I just want to interact with the controversy. President Biden said he equated the Georgia bill as the new Jim Crow. And also, I want to make you aware of my book. I just got my new press sheets. I'm going to be sending these out, handing these out to individuals. I published a book. It's called Weighed and Found Wanting, an analysis of major evangelical political engagement in America. It's volume 1. And I just want to make very clear. I spoke with someone and he said, well, I was making criticisms of African Americans. My book, my thesis has nothing whatsoever to do with African Americans in the main. My book addresses African Americans, evangelicals. I am writing to those, I am writing to my contemporaries, my peers who say they believe the same thing I believe. And so I don't expect sinners to do anything other than what sinners know to do. So my book in no shape, form, or fashion makes any kind of judgment on African Americans in the main. I'm concerned with, as God says through Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, God will deal with the outside. My job is to deal with the inside. And so again, my book is exclusively addressing those who say they share the same faith as me. And so these are called seller sheets. You can see the book has a little blurb about the summary and about the marketing and distribution. So again, if you are interested in getting a copy of my book, it can be purchased at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and major book retailers. I'm hoping to use this to get my book in stores like Walmart and to hopefully draw some attention and to be interviewed. So if you would like to join me in prayer, that is my major prayer emphasis, at least in this kind of sense here. And I also, the COVID-19 is starting to spike up. I'm asking that you would join in prayer for Karen Owens, her daughter Lisa. I have a friend who's called out prayer for someone by the name of Bobby. And he at that time was on 10% lung capacity. And a fellow brother in Christ of mine was rushed to the church, to the hospital just this week, Robert Taylor. And so I'm sure that you might know of some people who are being afflicted. And so I would ask that you be fervent in prayer, that God's will is and will continue to always be done. And so God is still on the throne. He's still sovereign. But we need to offer our petitions before our great King. Today, again, we want to discuss the voter registration acts that are happening. Now, let's put all the cards on the table. These are political issues in this sense. Texas has a Republican governor. Georgia has a Republican governor, and that's just the nature of politics. And there's concern because of the special situation of the last presidential election. There were a lot of modifications, and with modifications and extensions and new things being added, and we need to be honest and be mature. It adds the possibility of malfeasance. And so Republicans are concerned that voter manipulation goes on. People have the ability to harvest votes. And so, again, some of that was happening because of the pandemic. And so to safeguard future elections, they try to tighten up the security of the vote. Now, listen, as an African American, I'm going to be passionate that everyone has the right to vote. But the Democrats are having a hissy fit about the issue of an ID. And again, even to the degree that the Biden administration has filed a lawsuit in the state of Georgia trying to eradicate the law that was passed by the Georgia legislature, signed by Governor Kemp. And we're going to hear a clip from The World and Everything in It, where they interview Governor Kemp, and he to my great satisfaction, even though I had known this previously, because again, I had been talking about this video for a while, Governor Kemp is going to lay out even the criticism of the ID, and he's going to tell you in his own voice, anyone in Georgia who cannot afford an ID will be given one free. And remember, that's the chief bone of contention from the Democratic Party. You're going to hear Vice President Harris at some function elaborate that this is an opportunity for Republicans to suppress minority voter participation. She insults that audience, brown people, black people like me, that a government, and again, you'll hear in Governor Kemp's own word, we need an ID to cash a check. We need an ID to buy cigarettes. We need an ID to buy liquor. And you're telling me that insisting that a person who wants to exercise their constitutional right to vote, to simply have an ID to verify their identity, is an example of voter suppression. That President Biden has the temerity to say that is the new Jim Crow. And so I began, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but to lose his soul? And you who align yourself with Joe Biden, you are aligning yourself with things that come from the very pit of hell. That doesn't even make any sense. Insistent that an ID, that even if you take government services like welfare, and I know they don't call it food stamp, whatever they call it nowadays, you cannot access that without an ID. You can't board a plane without an ID. You can't cash a check. The list goes on and on and on. And you're telling me requiring a U.S. citizen? And Governor Kemp even said they added hours for absentee ballots. Now, absentee ballot is probably here to stay. But requiring that you have an ID to ensure that the people who are authorized to vote are the ones voting, and then to suggest that that is voter suppression, no. I don't even have the words. It's hard to muster the energy, because that's just utter foolishness. But that's what the Democratic Party, and you're going to hear in Governor Kemp's own words, it first started with President Obama, and it continues under President Biden. And now that, and I love that this is the third time that Georgia has been challenged by the Democratic Party, and they're 0-2, and I'm hopeful and cautiously confident that they'll be 0-3, because this just doesn't pass the smell test. But I'm outraged when President Biden has the temerity to say this is the new Jim Crow. So I'm going to show you a clip I'm going to play you a clip. It's an audio clip. I listened to this podcast, and again, I highly recommend The World and Everything in It. It presents the news from a unapologetically Christian worldview. And so that's where I get my news from each and every day. And so you'll see a clip. I keep saying clips. You'll hear a clip. It's a short interview with Governor Brian Kemp, the current governor of the great state of Georgia, the Peach State. And the same thing is happening here in my state of Texas. You might have heard the Democrats, because again, it's the legislative is controlled by Republicans, and 50 Democratic senators have left the state, and because if they would leave the state, there would not be a quorum, and so business cannot be conducted in Texas. And I commend Governor Abbott. He says he will continue to call for special sessions into the election. So we'll see. We'll see with these 50 Democratic senators, and some of them came down with COVID. I hope they're okay, but you reap what you sow. We'll see if they have the political stamina to stay away, to interfere with the business of Texas. And Texas voters should be taking notice. But without any further ado, we're going to hear the interview with Governor Kemp, and then I'll have some commentary at the end. Okay, like I said, this is an interview from The World and Everything in It. It was broadcast on Wednesday, and it's about a 5-minute interview with Governor Brian Kemp. Without any further ado, Brian Kemp.
It's Wednesday, the 28th of July, 2021. So glad to have you along for today's edition of The World and Everything in It. Good morning. I'm Mary Reichard.
And I'm Paul Butler. First up, election laws and who controls them. Democrats on Capitol Hill are again calling for new legislation to shift more power over election laws from the states to the federal government. Several Republican-led states passed laws this year to tighten up voting rules. That in the wake of the 2020 election that saw novel accommodations to account for precautions around the novel coronavirus.
Republicans said there were too many ways for bad actors to exploit the system, so they proposed new rules to ensure the security of future elections. But Democrats accused Republicans of hiding ulterior motives. Vice President Kamala Harris, for example.
This all is designed, I believe, to make it harder for you to vote so that you don't vote.
In other words, the administration charges that the laws are designed particularly to discourage minorities from voting. The war over voting laws is raging right now in Texas, where many Democratic lawmakers fled the state to stall new legislation.
But the battle began in the state of Georgia, where GOP Governor Brian Kemp signed new election rules into law back in March. Since then, the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit accusing Republicans of violating the civil rights of Georgia voters.
And here to speak with us now is the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp. Governor, good morning.
Hey, great to be on with you. Thank you.
Well, when you found out that the Justice Department was suing your state over the elections bill that you signed into law earlier this year, how did you react to that?
Well, it wasn't too surprising, quite honestly, which is kind of sad, but also makes me mad. I mean, it's very disappointing that the Biden administration is politicized in the Justice Department, especially with as many big issues as there are around the country with, increased violence, shootings and other things in a lot of our major cities around the country, the crisis on the border and a lot of other things going on, and they're going to start targeting states over a process that we've done for decades of deciding what our election laws are. It's just, it's kind of sad, but it also makes you mad, but at the end of the day, it's also not very surprising.
What is the status of that lawsuit, and might it affect elections in your state next year?
Well, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it's not just the Justice Department that's suing us. There was liberal groups that sued us, the night of or the day after, I think, I signed the bill. There's, 6 or 7 lawsuits. I've dealt with that for over a decade now, fighting the Obama Justice Department, fighting, a lot of these liberal activist groups that have always sued Georgia over our election laws. I had to sue the Obama Justice Department to get our citizenship check when you register to vote. I've been in court twice and won defending our photo ID requirement when we vote in person in Georgia. And we're now going to have that requirement for absentee ballots. So I look forward to going 3-0 against the Justice Department on that one. So this is really nothing surprising for us. It's just the left's playbook. But people need to realize 2 things. Number one, they need to realize that we're going to stand up and fight tooth and nail because we have the truth on our side, that this bill makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat. But number 2 is, this administration and the activists are coming after you and your ball game and your way of life and what you believe in your state next. And that should scare people across the country, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, Democrats are pushing to shift more control over election laws from the states to Washington. What's your response to what they're proposing on that?
Well, this is their response to that failing. I mean, they couldn't get H.R. 1S1 passed through the Congress, which is an unconstitutional federal mandate of elections, which thankfully it did pass, and the Republicans stuck together along with some other people up there and said, we're not going to do that. And I hope that they'll hold on that. But when that failed, their next step to just appease the activist base of the party was to start suing states. And they started with us, which is ridiculous when you think about, we have early voting in Georgia and Delaware, President Biden's own home state. Until this last legislative session, they didn't even have it in their law. They haven't used it in their elections, and they will in the future, but they still have less days than we do. You have a lot of these other Democratic-led states that you have to have an excuse to be able to vote by mail, absentee by mail. You don't have to have an excuse in Georgia, and our bill actually added days that you could vote on the weekend if you would like to, and the county opts into that. So really what they're saying is, quite honestly, just a bunch of lies and a bunch of rhetoric for a political agenda. It has nothing to do with what the truth and the way the process works at the state level, but we're willing to stand up and fight for that however long it takes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned voter ID, and I would like to ask you about that. Your state ditched the so-called signature matching process for ballots and now requires some form of voter identification for mail-in ballots. Now, Democrats say that will put an unequal burden on poor and minority voters who might be less likely to have a state-issued ID or else just might have a harder time meeting the new requirements. Governor, I know you believe this is not the case. Why not?
Well, we know that's not the case, and we also know that a vast majority of Georgians support the photo ID or the voter ID requirement. for voting absentee in this new piece of legislation. We've been using voter IDs here in Georgia since the mid-2000s. We'll give voters one for free if they don't have one. You can get them at your, driver service offices, and you can get them at your county registrar's office. And so this is really a hollow argument on their point. What we saw in the last election was, something that we need to address, and that's the mechanics of the elections process. When you have 5 to 10% of our population or voting population voting absentee by mail, signature match process, even though it's antiquated at times, works fairly well. But when you have 35 to 40%, the locals were overwhelmed. And I talked to them and said, would it make it easier if you're verifying a number versus someone's signature? Would that get the process to go quicker? Would it be more secure? And the ones I talked to said, absolutely, that would be helpful. And so that's what we put into the law, and most people support that. I mean, you have to have a voter ID, or you have to have a photo ID to cash checks and buy cigarettes and alcohol and get on an airplane and get government benefits to get in the Capitol building and other things in Washington, D.C., and most people have no issues with that, and they actually support that because they want their vote to be secure. They want it to be counted, and that's the way it should be. But elections should also be accessible, and they are in Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know many Democrats say that what triggered these election changes were claims by former President Trump and others about election fraud. Is that a true statement or no?
Well, I wouldn't think it is. I mean, it's certainly not to me. It's not, we have plenty of precedent in the state of Georgia, and I've been through this myself even long before I was governor, doing housekeeping election bills after big elections, normally after presidential years or whenever we got new voting equipment. We would go in and learn from the last election, fix any mechanical problems that we have. And I think if you look at how the legislature went about this, Speaker Ralston in the House set up a committee to start looking at these issues that Georgians faced, started talking to local elections officials. We took recommendations from the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia because it's their elections office that are actually running the elections on election day, and we took some ideas from them and also the legislators that were hearing from constituents. So, you may have some that are doing things because of what they think may happen during elections, but the final product, the bill that actually passed that I signed, addresses the mechanical issues that we saw in the last election.
Okay. Final question here, Governor. And I want to ask you about Major League Baseball's decision to move the All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver this year. MLB got a lot of pushback for its foray into politics there. Have officials budged in the league at all in the wake of that pushback? Any indication that they might bring the All-Star game back to Atlanta in the near future?
Well, we'll see what they decide to do in the future. I mean, quite honestly, I'm not too worried about what all is after what they've done. I think a lot of people like myself are very frustrated with those actions. People are tired of the woke cancel culture. They're tired of people not standing up to these activists and the politicians. Like, quite honestly, Joe Biden, Vice President Harris, the U.S. Justice Department and other activists that are suing us and saying, you're wrong, the truth is on our side, we're not going to waver, we're not going to bend, and we're not going to do that in Georgia. And I think Major League Baseball made a terrible decision to politicize sports. I think you saw in their TV ratings for the All-Star game, it was as low as anybody can remember in recent memory from what my understanding is. And I think their patrons are speaking with their wallet. But that being said, it's a great sport. It's just really disappointing that they did that, and hopefully they learn from that lesson.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has been our guest. Governor, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, there you have it. So again, I found that interview very enlightening, and I know how partisan politics work in America. I know those who are conservative or on the right are going to agree, and those who are on the left, progressives and liberals, are going to disagree. And again, I think that's indicative. I think that's a microcosm of our world. I don't understand the left. Now, the left will come back and very easily say they don't understand me. And so as I often try to do, I jotted down a few notes and I'm going to cover them in reverse order. She ended with the question about the MLB, and I am getting less and less. I'm getting more and more. That's a better way of saying it. I'm getting more and more frustrated with sports. The NBA marched in the gay pride parade. You see the NFL giving into woke culture, and it really upset me that MLB decided to use this issue to justify pulling the All-Star game from Atlanta, and it went to Denver. And as you heard the governor say, now first of all, I'm not surprised. And again, you reap what you sow. And so he said, and I'll take his word, that the Major League All-Star game was one of the lowest rated in recent history. And I didn't watch the home run contest. I watched not one single second. Now, some of that had to do with the fact that my Cubs have fallen out of contention, but this issue makes it so much easier to find something else to do. And in fact, yesterday is a perfect example. The Cubs played at 120. I did not watch a single pitch. I made my video during that time. I am finding other things to do with my time. Now, again, I'll full transparency. That becomes easier when the Cubs suck. But I'm getting frustrated. And I agree with Governor Kemp. Woke cancel culture. The moment you do not bend the knee, they take drastic steps like moving major. And so think about this. Coming out of the pandemic, businesses were suffering. And so Georgia business owners, especially in the Atlanta area, they were salivating about this opportunity to have this influx of business coming into the area. And Major League Baseball took that away. And so those whose hopes were pinned on the crowds coming in for the All-Star game and all the things that come along with All-Star week, Georgia lost that. And so, now granted, Denver picked it up, but Georgia lost that. Governor Kemp said it twice. And brothers and sisters, remember, I'm always talking primarily to evangelicals. We need to quit being so reticent. Truth is on our side. We must stop giving up the high ground. I am not going to ever give up the high ground. Cancel me. Don't subscribe. The channel shut down. I don't care. And so as long as I have this opportunity, I'm going to speak God's gospel truth. Why? Because the truth is on our side. Whom Jesus has set free is free indeed. Where the spirit is, there is liberty. And I'm not going to let anyone take away my liberty. I'm going to say what I want to say as long as I have the ability to say it. And then, like Peter and John, throw me in jail, and I'm going to sing praises of suffering for my King. Truth is on our side. And then the voter ID. And remember, that's the crux of the Democratic cry. The majority of Georgia voters support it. Now, that's not the strongest argument, but it is an argument. Did you hear him? Georgia voters can get a free one if they need it in multiple ways. Now, I wasn't able to write down, but he mentioned at least three different agencies that they can go to. But again, who in Georgia doesn't have one already? Did you listen to all the things that he said that you had to do? That you needed an ID? I paid special note. he said, and again, now this is politics, but he said to the local election officials that he talked to, they requested that he talked about the signature and how that was labor intensive. And my God, the vast majority of us are not trained to be able to look at a signature and say, okay, that's what, that's authentic and that's not. And so that was cumbersome, time consuming. It's pretty easy to look at an ID. So voter ID. And then he talked about Georgia's allowances. They have more early voting. And he even drew the contrast between what's available in Georgia and what's available in President Biden's home state. What a freaking hypocrite. Georgia has more liberal voting opportunities than what's the state? Delaware, which is the president's home state, but he calls Georgia's election laws Jim Crow. Dude, really? Did you hear him say, Georgia, you don't need an excuse for an absentee ballot. Just request one. And as long as you're a legal citizen, just request an absentee ballot, submit the photo ID, you're good to go. And he also said more days were added. So what is all the rancor about? I love his line: easy to vote, hard to cheat. I love that line. Easy to vote, hard to cheat. Now, I don't know if I wrote it down wrong because I was trying to get it down, but I think he said Bill HRS1 did not pass. But see, brothers and sisters, this is the Democratic playbook. See, they know that they could not get the voters, I believe it's the Discrimination Act, where you can't discriminate against sex and gender was understood in 1960 as the biological sex. Now, they could have very easily added or passed a bill, but guess what? They know they don't ever have the political capital to pass a bill. So what do? They go to court. The same thing. They know they can never pass a law making it legal for a man to marry a man. They know that no state will be able ever be able to pass that. So what? They go to court. And so what they cannot do through legislation, they want to do through the judicial branch. But brothers and sisters, did you pass civics? The Supreme Court is not supposed to be the vehicle to make law. The Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of the law. That's Civics 101. The executive enforces the law, Congress makes the law, and the Supreme Court ensures that the laws are constitutional. But the Democratic, that's their playbook. They know they cannot pass it through legislative action. So they know they can never get enough votes in both the House and the Senate to make it legal to do all of this LGBTQ plus. So what do? They run to the court. Now, the court is still going to own the fact that they have made these egregious, immoral decisions. And can I just say in passing, I asked the question once and nobody really seemed to have a problem. Do you know for the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but do you know, let me just cut to the chase, there are no Protestants on the Supreme Court. They are either Jewish or Roman Catholics. And that should be concerning for the evangelicals. Maybe it's not, but it is to me. And so, brothers and sisters, I am not surprised. I am not surprised in some of the decisions that the Supreme Court has made. In fact, I remember last summer, I read or I listened to a YouTube video where the late Supreme Court Justice Anthony Scalia. He said that he was against Roe v. Wade philosophically, but not morally. See the difference? Do you see the difference? He was against it legally, but not morally. Does that bother you? Because it most certainly bothers me. Roe v. Wade is wrong in a variety of ways, but most of all, it's wrong because it's wrong morally. I don't care about constitutional; those are temporal issues. I care about what really matters. As my friend Pam is reminding all of us, it's eternity that matters. And so I'm glad HRS1, and maybe I don't have that right, but you do remember he did mention that they tried to pass this law in Congress. I do want to mention that unlike the South Dakota governor who just folded like a cheap suit and didn't even pursue legal action, Governor Kemp says we will fight this tooth and nail. He mentioned the presidential administrations are 0 for 2, and he hopes that this new legal challenge would put them 0 for 3. Not only is it the Biden administration and I got something in my eye, it's not only the Biden administration and the former President Obama administration, that he said there are 6 or 7 liberal groups that are constantly attacking the Georgia laws that are passed by the elected officials of the state of Georgia. Status quo. So, brothers and sisters, this is politics. When the Democrats control the House, and we talk about redistricting, guys, that happens every election cycle. And so the census comes out, and whoever is in control of the state legislature, they control how the new map is drawn. Quit crying and grow the hell up. And so if the Republicans are in charge, guess what? They're going to draw the lines in a way that favors them. If the Democrats are in power, they are going to draw lines that favor them. Grow the hell up. That's the way it works. Governor Kemp made an excellent point. President Biden is going to expend political and economical capital to fight these battles when we have issues like violence. I'm going to make a video, and so many of you call for the defunding of the police. Minneapolis took away, I want to say $5 million from the Minneapolis police budget. Guess what happened? There was an increase of 64% in violent crimes. Guess what they did? They added 22 million. And maybe my numbers are off, but this is not off. They took money away. They saw it was a colossal failure. And then they added that money back plus some. You got to be out of your freaking mind if you think the issue is less policing. Now, I'm all for police reform. Who's not for police reform? Who's not for holding police officers who abuse their police powers? I know I am. Sign me up. All day, every day, twice on Sunday. The crisis on the border. I forget the numbers, so I'm not going to try to quote it, but there has been an exponential growth in people coming across the border ever since President Biden came in office. So much so that finally Vice President Harris went down to the Texas border. So the Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against the state of Georgia. And then Texas, 50 Democratic senators have left in their attempt to block the Republican-led measures to increase voter security. That interview began with a clip from Vice President Harris. She says, and I'm hoping I got it right. I think I got it right. It's designed to make it harder for you to vote. What a freaking insult. Requiring someone to have an ID. I'm sorry. And I'm mad. I was born in 1964. I think Medgar Evers was killed in 1963. I know it was shortly before I was born. I watched the stories. I learned about the 3 civil rights young men who were killed. The story about she was an Italian woman, and she had, I want to say she was in Alabama, and she was driving down the street, and the Klan saw her with an African American in the passenger seat. And that mere sight, they shot her. I believe they shot both. And how about the freedom rides? When courageous Negroes and Caucasian college students made the ride down to the South. I can still see the picture of the Greyhound bus. I can still see the picture of the kids with blood running down their face. And President Biden has the gall to call this the new Jim Crow. And I'm pissed at you because it didn't move the needle. What was the quote he said? Man, it's going to take my phone a second. I can't find it, but he says, if you're struggling on whether to vote for Donald Trump or me, you ain't black. What an insult. And he was elected with over 88% of African American evangelicals vote. Over 85 of African American evangelicals vote. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world, but to lose his soul? What can a man give in exchange of his soul? Why are you giving your soul to a political entity that insults you, assaults your understanding of history? Many of you who will watch this or eventually watch this, you're college educated, and you would claim to be a Christian, and yet, how do you defend this? Okay, here's a better question. What will it take? Will it take the president using the N-word? What will it take for you to wake up? But I know this. We fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. I'm going to ask you, the redeemed, you, the elect, you, the called out ones, to join me in prayer. Because this is not intellectual. This is spiritual. And we have brothers and sisters who are trapped in darkness. And so the only elixir to what ails this sin-cursed world is to pray that God will take away the heart of stone and give a heart of flesh. Joseph Biden certainly doesn't have the gospel. Why are you aligning? If you say you have the gospel, if you're saved, sanctified, full of the Holy Ghost, why are you aligning with people that are in darkness? So now my emotion has changed. I'm not mad. I'm sad. I'm grieved. And so I want to be better at praying. There's someone who hounds me on social media, and I was talking to a sister last night, and I got to do a better job of quit trying to go tit for tat, toe for toe, toe to toe, and I got to do more praying. Of course, always praying for me, but I need to pray for my adversary. And so the scriptures is clear. Pray for those who despitefully use you. Pray, love your enemy. And so let me be better at loving my enemy. I don't see you as my enemy, but philosophically, spiritually, theologically, you are. And so that my whole disposition has changed. I want to be better. But I'm going to call sin, sin. And brothers and sisters, if you are trying to make a political, racial issue out of requiring somebody to have an ID that the state says, if you don't have one, we'll give you one, and you want to call that the new Jim Crow, I want to be as wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. I'm going to again encourage you to take the journey with me. I'm here to stay. I ain't going anywhere. And so if the channel grows, it grows. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm going to be faithful to what I believe God has placed upon my heart. And so I believe I have the gift and calling to speak gospel truth. I have the gift and callings to look at issues from an evangelical perspective, which I believe is grounded in orthodox Judeo-Christian thinking. And so I serve for an audience of one. And so whether my numbers grow, and my numbers will grow, I'm convinced of that. My numbers will grow. And so I'm going to encourage you to tell your friends, and then their friends will tell their friends. You can be a blessing to me by sharing the video. Now, it's not going to be a world-class production. And so show it to your friends who are grounded. But most of all, can you do this for me? Can you pray with me? Can you pray for me? And I'm not asking you to do anything but to say, Lord, bless Ricky's channel and let your will be done. Lord, if this is of you, then Father, give Ricky power. That's all I'm asking. And then it's well with my soul. But this is what I know, because I've been a living witness. The affectionate, fervent prayers of the righteous availeth much. Now, that doesn't mean we change God's mind. We can't manipulate or coerce or cajole or influence. Not in that way. But just ask God to and just delight yourself in God. And so be like Jesus. He saw where the Father was at work and he joined him. And so if you think I'm of God, then join with me in asking God to give me favor to speak his word. Also, pray for me, because I know that as I pursue this, that Satan is going to kill, he's going to attempt to kill, steal, and destroy. And so I pray that I would keep my hand to the plow and serve for an audience of one. You do understand what that imagery comes back, right? You remember when Lot and his wife and his family were leaving, the angel told them not to look back. Lot's wife, she stopped. She looked back. But the image of keeping your hand to the plow, because if you don't keep your hand on the plow, before you know it, you're no longer going in the course that you thought you were going. You veer off to the left, you veer off to the right, and now you're not laying that plow, you're not plowing that field in a straight line. And that was bad to then make the ground fertile. And so keep your hand to the plow. Pray that I keep my hand to the plow. And so Satan is waiting around the corner. you do remember the imagery, don't you? Satan is like a roaring lion. And if you know the nature of the lion, he lays in the weeds and he waits for the most opportune time to strike. And so I was speaking just with my college roommate, and he is now the assistant adjutant general. And he says, "Listen, man, I got to keep my eye on the ball." And so be praying not only for me, but can you just pray for men, especially Christian men, who are trying to live right and love their wives and be godly men, husbands and fathers. And so Satan will use women, and you remember the song, remember the wine, women, and song. That's been the go-to of the adversary. And so I'm 57. I know I don't look it, but trying to finish out this fourth quarter strong. I don't know if I'll post one tomorrow. I definitely won't be posting on Sunday. Tomorrow, my training plan is to run 17 miles. And so I'm going to get up at dark 30 because I need to always be home on Saturdays for prayer. Want to encourage you to, again, lift up those individuals that I mentioned earlier, Robert Taylor, Bobby, Karen Owens, her daughter Lisa, and also two other individuals that we are praying for on a regular basis. His name is Carson. He's 18 years old. He's fighting courageously against cancer. And then a sister, her name is Teresa. Two other individuals. Teresa, she is facing a likely diagnosis of Lou Gehrig. And then Brother Gary, a friend of a friend. Haven't met him, but looking forward to meeting him. He's battling liver cancer. And so I'm sure there's many issues on your docket. If you would like, you can message me. You can do it in the comment section, and we'll gladly add your supplication to our prayer. We meet every Wednesday. Now, we meet on Facebook. The times are always central. We meet on Wednesdays at 6 a.m. and Saturdays at 7 a.m. So Lord willing, we'll be gathering tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. If you would like us to pray for you, we would delight in offering your petition, your praise, your whatever, your confession, whatever, before the great King of Kings, Lord of Lords. So today, I'll be riding the bike for 26 miles. And so I'm kind of doing it backwards. I usually begin my day with my workout, but I decided to do the video, and I'm going to be doing some strength workout and maybe grab a bite to eat, and then sometime today eat those 26 miles. What I try to do on Friday nights is go to bed real early, because I'm always trying to get up at dark 30. And so my plan is to get up around 2 o'clock this morning. That way I can get those miles in before the 7 o'clock prayer time. So I think I'll stay on that course. All right. Hey, I really invite you to strongly consider all the things that I mentioned before. But you can really do it in a very dramatic way by clicking that subscribe button and sharing this video with your friends, with your network, with your sphere of influence. Share it on Facebook. Share it with whatever. Share it by email. But help me get the word out that there is an African American evangelical who is committed to dealing with any issue, any and all issues, from a unapologetic evangelical worldview. Until we meet again, keep your hands to the plow, seek to serve for an audience of one. You'll see that icon to gives you a visual example of clicking that subscribe, hitting that bell to be notified. God bless.